All right, let me get started. My name is Agnes Molnar. I am from far, far away from Hungary in Central Europe. I work as an independent consultant on international projects, mostly in Western Europe and in the US. I've been working with SharePoint for more than, 12 years, from the very, very first version back in 2001. It's a long history. I have collected a lot of experience, a lot of to-dos and not to-dos, and I'm going to try to share those best practices with you today. The focus is on enterprise content management, on information architecture, and on search, of course, because they are all tied together. You will see what are the impacts if you improve your IA, and how you can improve your search with IA and vice versa, what you can do, and what tools we have for that. I'm going to do some live demonstrations as well. What you have to know in advance, everything I'm showing you today is configured with out-of-the-box tools. I'm not using any third-party tools. I'm not using any custom components. I am not a developer, so I don't even have Visual Studio on my laptop. But really, everything I'm going to show you is out of the box. What does it mean? It means you can do this too. It's not magic. It's just some tricks, you know? And there is a big difference between magics and tricks. All right, so the agenda for today. First of all, I'm going to talk about information overload a bit, because it's very important to understand how much information we get every day, and how we can process it, and what we can do in order to be able to process everything we get, or at least the important things. After that, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks how to be the hero of information architecture, how to plan the IA, how to plan your search, how to plan them together to be even better. And I'm going to show you some findability and discovery tricks and tools. And at the end, I'm going to talk about search semantics in SharePoint 2013. So let's see what information overload is and what kind of impact it has on our everyday lives. Well, you might think that information overload is when we have a lot of information, a lot of content. But actually, it's more than that, because we might be able to process a lot of content and a huge amount of information. We talk about information overload when the amount of content, the amount of input we get is greater than our capacity to process. You know that feeling when you get more and more emails, and when you get more and more tasks to do, and you get more and more documents, and after a point you feel it's impossible to do. It's impossible to finish everything you've got, right? You know this feeling. So basically, I have a quote for you today. Getting information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. It is from Mitchell Kapor, and it's very important to understand. This quote is about internet. But actually, we all live online. We do have intranet, of course. We do have a lot of internal content, internal documents, internal conversations, internal emails, internal everything. But we are not separated from the rest of the world anymore. We live online, and we get much more information that we can process. For example, the average person who works in the information management gets about 63,000 words of new information every day. Do you think it's a big number? Who thinks it's big, it's huge? Who thinks it's not that bad? Okay, the statistics shows that the average length of a novel on Amazon is about the same. You get the amount of a new book, of new information every day. Does it make sense? And some scientists made some other research, and they found if you wanted to read everything you've got last year, it would take the first 3 months of this year if you did nothing else, just reading what you've got last year. Right? So it's huge. And social makes it even worse. We live social. We have a lot of emails. We have social in SharePoint. We have Yammer. We have LinkedIn. I have seen a couple of customers, a couple of companies who uses SharePoint, Facebook in the business. Not for personal communication only, but for business communication. And we have Twitter and everything. So even if we just think about our everyday work, it's a crazy amount of information. So we have to figure out how to deal with that, what to do in order to be able to process all those information and help our customers or help our users to process all those information. So let's start. Be the hero. First of all, we need some structure, right? Without any structure, we are lost. The structure of information is called information architecture. Information architecture is basically the art and science of organizing and labeling the content to support findability or discovery and usability, right? So instead of this experience, you know this when you have more and more and more people, although my husband told me it has some structure too. The old documents are in the bottom and the new documents are on the top, right? It's a kind of structure. This is how my husband thinks about it, but I don't think it's the best structure. So instead of this, our goal is to have something like that. When we have some structure, when we have labels, we have sites, document libraries, we can tag our documents. So when it's easy to find and it's easy to process the content, it's easy to use the content. So let's see what we do have in SharePoint, because we have a lot of things. We have a lot of tools in SharePoint to support the information architecture, to make our lives easier. We have metadata, columns in SharePoint. We have taxonomy. We can build up our own taxonomy as a managed metadata. We have content types, sites, lists, document libraries, document sets, workflows, content organizer rules. We have a lot of things to consider to make our information architecture better. So those are the tools in SharePoint we have to consider when we want to plan or when we want to improve our information architecture. The other point and the other feature I would like to highlight today is search. Search is the component that connects people to the information they need to get their jobs done. So search is a connection. It helps in findability. It helps in discovery. It helps in a lot of ways. So let me ask this. You have SharePoint, right? How many of you do not have any SharePoint yet? OK, thank you for coming in. How many of you have 2010, SharePoint 2010, or earlier? Good. How many of you have fast search for SharePoint on the top of your 2010 implementation? OK. And how many of you have SharePoint 2013? Great. Office 365? Excellent. Okay, so most of you have SharePoint. If you don't, you will, I bet. If you have SharePoint, you have search. You have search in 2010, out of the box or fast search or SharePoint. You have search in SharePoint 2013. You have search in O365. So you have the technology that you need, right? But search is not about technology only, of course. But we can say you have the technology. From this point, you might say, oh, I do have the technology. Search is easy, isn't it? I can go back, I can turn it on, and that's it. I will have search, right? No, unfortunately, search is supposed to be easy. But actually, the challenge is not search. You can create your search service application, and you can deploy your search center, and there you have search. Having a good search is the challenge. And actually, finding information is the challenge. And helping users to find information is the challenge. And this is why we have to plan for search, and this is why we have to be careful about it. All right, so let me show you my first demonstration of findability challenges. As you can see, this is in O365. I'm going to switch back and forth between O365 and SharePoint on-premises, just to show you that everything I'm demonstrating is possible on both implementation, right? So it's not because I like one or other better, or something is not possible here or something is not possible there. I'm switching back and forth to show you that everything I'm demonstrating today is possible everywhere. All right, so this is on O365. So now, let me search for something like marketing, right? And I'm immediately getting the search results. Do you like them? No. No. Why not? Those are very nice 10 blue links, right? OK, so you don't like it. Great. I don't like it either. Why? Because it's like 10 blue links. I don't have refiners, and I don't have anything, right? So in these days, in 2014, you do not like this 10 blue lines experience, and this is good, because we can do much better things. So let me switch to this page, to everything. First, I do have refiners. I'm going to talk about the importance of good refiners later. And I have the hover panel. I can see the preview. I can see the properties of the results. I can see some actions. I can see the inside of this result. So I get much more information about the results. In this way, I can interact with them, and I can easily find the thing that I really need. And this way, I can really help my users to find the information. OK. Do you like this second experience much better, right? But the question is, have you ever been in Oslo? Why are you laughing? Who has been in Oslo, in Norway? Cool. Do you like it? It's a nice place, isn't it? OK, but the real question today is not, have you ever been in Oslo? The question is, have you seen Oslo? Right? Because Oslo have a new meaning since Monday, right? So this is Oslo. Let me introduce the new great tool of Microsoft. What's that? This is a new tool to discover information. It's also search-based. It's based on the Office graph. It's cool. This is basically a search-based application. You can do cool things like that on the top of your search too, right? So Oslo is a good tool. I am very excited to start using it. in my life because it might help, and I bet it will help to discover the information I need. And based on my networks, based on my colleagues, based on the people I work with, I use Yammer, I use SharePoint, etc., etc. But what is the basics for everything here? For a good search experience, for having this experience in Oslo, the basics are the basic is information architecture, right? So I have to plan, I have to implement good information architecture behind the scenes. So let me show you how to do that, what kind of tips and tricks I do have for you. Definitely it's challenging. Having a good information architecture is a big challenge. First of all, you have to define your goals. What you want to get and why. What is your main motivation? Do you have some pain points? Do you have something that doesn't work? Do you have something that is missing from your environment, from your company? Who are the owners of those new functions? Who are the owners of the information architecture? Who are the owners today? If you have something, definitely you have some content today. Who are the owners of your content today? And who will be the new owners when you get there, when you achieved your goals? Where is your content today, and where you want to store your content tomorrow? If you want to store it in SharePoint, if you want to store it in O365, if you have a different content management system today, do you want to migrate, or do you want to simply just integrate it into search? All of them are big questions when you implement your information architecture. You also have to know about the knowledge flows, how people create documents, how those documents will be evaluated, if they have a high knowledge value or a low knowledge value. If it has been created by a subject expert, or if it has been created by a junior. If it has the picture of the new dog of the subject expert, it has no business value. But if it has some deep technical details or deep business details, it has a high business value, and it has to get knowledge from being data. And you have to define the whole flow for this, from creation to the presentation of your knowledge documents. You have to understand your complex business environment. You might have departments, you might have different functional units in your company, you might have some projects, you might have products, and you have to figure out how to organize your content around those units in your company. And also you have to understand the context, your user's context. In what context they will need the information. If I'm searching for something, am I searching for that thing because I need that for my task now? What kind of task is that? What kind of process is this task the part of? And also, if I am searching for this just for curiosity, why I'm doing that? Do I want to learn something new, or do I want to know what my colleagues are working on, etc., etc.? You have to understand the context of the users. And of course, we have some tools and techniques for this. First of all, you have to work with your users. And this is one dimension of the information architecture planning. Working with users is kind of challenging sometimes. You have to observe them. This might mean you have some workshops with them, some well-organized, well-planned, prepared workshops. When you ask them what they need, what they want, what kind of information they need to get their everyday jobs done. But also, you can schedule them. you can just observe what they are doing, how they are working, and what kind of content they consume, and how they get that content, where they get that content from. Based on your observations, you have to create a kind of summary. Usually this summary is a huge document with a lot of tables and evaluation sheets and all those kind of reports things. But the result is, the point is, you have to create some kind of summary of your observations. A kind of summary, what kind of use cases we have, what kind of scenarios, what kind of tasks our users do, what kind of content they are interested in, right? After that, you have to identify the audiences. And I'm not talking about technically the SharePoint audiences, I'm talking about user audiences. Meaning, what kind of groups, what kind of logical groups you can define in your business. You likely have sales guys, you likely have marketing guys, you might have developers, you might have support guys, you might have project managers, you might have product managers, etc., etc. You might have people who are interested in public speaking, regardless of their position, regardless of their role in the organizational hierarchy. You might have people who are interested in photography, etc., etc. Those things might be important. And you have to identify which one is important and which one is not important. For example, if people have an interest, like photography might be not important for you. But if they have an interest in public speaking, that might be a really important information for you, because you can see who is interested in going to conferences, going to the customers, telling about your cool projects or services or products or anything. And you have to support them. I'm going to show you how you can do that. So based on the user's properties, department, interests, skills, role, location, etc., you have to define the audiences. As I said, you also have to define the tasks and processes, and you have to build up the use cases that you will have in your information architecture and that you will have at the end when you get there. But we have another dimension of information architecture, and this is the content. You also have to evaluate your content you have today and that you plan to have in a year, in 2 years, or 5 years. First, you have to do a kind of content inventory. You have to analyze what kind of content you have, what kind of content types you have, what kind of metadata, what kind of structures you have. Those are all important information. This inventory also has to contain the volume of your content. How many documents you have in this and that content type. How many documents you have in this and that repository. Those are really important information. Imagine if you don't know that. And you don't do anything, just start crawling that content source. Right? And if you have millions of documents, the crawling might take weeks. So without planning, it might be very dangerous, right? So if you start something today and it ends in 3 weeks, and if you don't plan for it, you won't be happy at all. So you have to know the volume of your content. You also have to know the metadata and taxonomy of your content. What kind of properties you have on the content. Why those properties are attached to the content today. Are they important properties or not? Do they have to be reorganized or they are fine as is? So you have to build up your own content models for your all content that you have and that you plan to have. And the last point on this slide is the golden set. And let me explain this because this is one of the most important things in information architecture. When you plan for information architecture and when you plan to implement your information architecture, don't try to change the whole world around you, because you cannot do that. And it's not your fault. So don't take it wrong. It's not your fault. Instead, so let me just tell you a very simple example. Let's say you have millions of documents, right? All stored in SharePoint because you already moved that from file shares, but you do not have any metadata on them because you just simply did one-to-one migration from your file shares. And of course, you are not satisfied with the search experience, right? You know that you should improve the metadata somehow. You should figure out what kind of taxonomies to use, what kind of metadata to use, etc., etc. But you cannot do this like that for your millions of documents immediately. Instead of that, and you cannot teach your users to do that as soon as you are done, because when you are done at the beginning, your users will continue the tagging and organizing the content in order to keep it clean, because it's important to keep it clean. So you know, if you just clean up your house today, but you do not do anything in the next month, it will be a mess. So you have to keep it clean. So what to do? You have millions of documents. Choose a small set of those documents, a well-defined small set of those documents, and tag only them for first. In this way, first, you don't need so much resources in the first phase. Second, even a small amount of documents is enough to prove the value in the good information architecture. So you can present this golden set. I call this as a golden set of documents. You can present this small set of documents to your end users saying, hey, this is what you will get if you have architecture behind your content, right? Second, if now you implement search for this small golden set of documents, you might have brilliant search experience. Why? Because if this small set of documents is tagged properly, with the proper metadata in the proper way, your search will rock. You can find everything. You will have the best refiners. You can display those properties, etc., etc. And once again, you can present this experience to your users, right? And they will like it, and it's a very good motivation for them. And then you can go group by group, and you can extend the information architecture until you are done, right? So this is, in my experience, this is the best way to start. Start in small, but make it the best by your best knowledge. And one more thing for the content. We do have content. We do have users. You turn on search, and your users will use search, hopefully. They will if they like it. So if you do a good job, they will use it. If they don't like the search experience, they will give up. So how you can get information about your users' search behavior and your users' search habits? The answer is search analytics. We have very good search analytics in SharePoint 2013. And you might get those reports. And Martin White from the UK told a couple of weeks ago that search analytics are the big data of search. And this is true. Why? Because you have to analyze the search analytic reports. It's not enough to download those reports. You have to analyze them. What tools, what ways we have for that? The same that we have for big data. We have to extract information, useful information, from search analytics. For example, you can extract the keywords that your users were using. You can extract the keywords that resulted 0 results. Why it is important? First, because those might be some keywords that have some real business value. For example, if you can see your users were searching for Microsoft CRM, but got 0 results, that means they are interested in Microsoft CRM, but they couldn't find it. So you have to do something. What to do in this case? Let's think about the users. Let's say you are the end user. You are searching for something, right? And you cannot find it. What to do? What options you have? The first option is that this content really does not exist. What to do in this case? It's very easy. You have to create it, or some of your colleagues. But someone has to create this content. That's easy. The second option, if you cannot find something, might mean that that content does exist somewhere, but that content source, that repository, is not included in your search. What to do in this case? Consider to crawl that content source. Of course, not as an end user, but you can suggest, hey, I couldn't find anything for Microsoft CRM, but I know we do have a lot of CRM documentation in our file share. Is it possible to crawl that file share? Of course, technically it's possible, so you go and do that, right? But there is a third option you have to consider if you cannot find something. Security. Maybe the content you are searching for is there. It is crawled and included in search. But maybe you do not have permission to that content. What to do in this case? Of course, you can request permissions if you know that this content does exist. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't get it. The problem happens when we cannot find the document we are looking for, but we do not know if it does exist or not, if we should create it or not. And it's a very big, big question to consider, and search analytics can help with it in a holistic view. All right, what about findability? What we do have in SharePoint for findability? We have a lot of search user interface elements to support findability. First of all, we have refinements. Of course, we do. It's a big thing for findability. We do have result types and display templates. We can display the different types of results in a different way. This is cool. We have the hover panel with metadata and the preview of the document. It all has the findability. We also have, of course, query, but we can define query rules. I'm going to show you some query rules very soon. And query rules are just really big, big value for findability. This seems to be quite easy or quite simple. But you have to know that search is really complex behind the scenes. So I have told you that you can add your file shares, right? It sounds very easy. Technically, it is easy. But from business perspective, from planning perspective, from governance perspective, you have to consider a lot of things. So let me show you how complex the search flow in SharePoint 2013 is. This is the flow from the content source to the end users, right? On the left side, you can see the content sources. And I mean the systems where you get the content from. You can define the content sources in SharePoint. Then you have the local index. You have result sources. You have query rules, result blocks. You have the refinement panel, the hover panel. We have display templates. We have so many things to configure. And this is only the out-of-the-box configuration. You can build some custom things on the top of each. You can do your custom solutions on the top of search. It is really, really complex, right? So let's talk about semantics in search and how to get there and what kind of semantics we can have SharePoint, because semantic search is a kind of big expression, but we have to know, we have to understand how we can get it in SharePoint and how to get there. Semantic search seeks to improve search accuracy by understanding the searcher's intent and the context of search. What does it mean? It means that in search, you have to consider at least 3 different things. We have to talk about the content, of course, because we have to have the content in the index in order to present it in search. We have to consider the users. What kind of users I have? What kind of different audiences I have? How to support them? How to give them the best search experience I can? And also, we have to consider the context of search. What tasks are my users working on when they do the search? What they are trying to find, how I could help them, and what can I do for them? And we have several tools to support those things. First of all, the easiest one is audience targeting, using the SharePoint audiences. I can target some search results for some audiences, for sales, for example, for people who are interested in public speaking. We can use user targeting. We have result sources, query rules, refiners, ranking models. We have a lot of tools. And now let me show you some ways to support those contextual things in SharePoint search. So first of all, you can see my O365 result page right now. And instead of just searching for marketing, I would like to get the marketing presentations, right? Because I am planning some presentation, and I need to find some slides for this. So let me do this. Presentation. I'm looking for a marketing presentation. What can you see here? First of all, we have a separate result block here for the PowerPoint files. So the PowerPoint files were promoted to a separate result block. Why? Because I was looking for presentations, right? So I get immediately the presentations. The same can happen with PDFs, for example. If I'm looking for marketing PDF, I get the PDF files on the top of the result set, highlighted, promoted into a separate result block. How to get this? This is very easy. You can create query rules for this. And those query rules can be found on your site settings. And if I scroll down here, you can see that I do have a query rule for PDFs. Meaning, if the user is searching for PDF, or I'm going to get the PDF files for the query. And the same for the PowerPoint. If the user is searching for PPT, PPTM, PPTX, presentation, or some other things, I'm going to create a new result block for PowerPoint presentations. It's very simple. And each of them are assigned to the local SharePoint results. So every query I do on the default result source, I get those promoted results in a separate result block. This is all based on the query rules. You can create it. The other thing to support the user's intent, I'm going to show you this on my on-premises SharePoint. But this can be also configured on O365. All right, so here, I'm going to show you I have 4 different users. I have Jack, Tina, Chris, and Will. And I have 3 different browsers opened with 3 different users. You will see that Jack is a sales manager. Tina works in marketing. And I have Chris and Will working in professional services. So in this demonstration, I'm using Jack, Tina, and Chris, sales, marketing, and professional services. In the first browser, and please don't check the type of this browser, because I have to use different kinds of browsers and Internet Explorer. But you will see that I really needed 3 different browsers for this. All right. So in this, I am logged in as Tina, the marketing manager. I am looking for a customer called Abacus. I get some nice results with some refiners. It's great. And I also got some case studies highlighted here. Why? Because I am supposed to be interested in case studies because I work for marketing, right? All right, that's nice. Let's see what Chris gets. As you can recall, Chris works in professional services in a different department. So let me search for the same thing on the same search center, logged in as Chris. Here you go. I've got the case studies too, because I work in the professional services, so it really makes sense. But I also got the latest presentations. Why? Because I have public speaking as an interest on my user profile. I am interested in public speaking, therefore presentations might be interesting for me. They are highlighted here. All right, let's see what Jack, our sales manager, can see here. Let's search for the same expression on the same search center. Here you go. It's a different page. It's not even the same page, right? We are on the sales page now, highlighting and filtered into some content types only, contracts and proposals in the default result set. And on the right side, I get some federated results from Financial Times. Why? Because I am a sales manager. I'm supposed to be interested in those results. But of course, I have permission to open the default search result set as well, so let me go there. Let me check what I can see here. And you can see that instead of case studies, I have the latest contracts and proposals because I work for sales. I want to sell our company's services or products, right? I need to see the contracts and proposals and those kind of things. And I also get the latest presentations. Why? Because I am a salesman, have to get those presentations to be able to present the content of my company. And this can be done also out of the box. And it's a very simple example, I know, but you get the point. You can target the results, you can target the result blocks, and you can target what your users get. But we are going back to metadata, because everything is related to metadata in search. If your information architecture is bad, your search experience will be bad. If you do not have good metadata and consistent metadata, your search experience will be bad. So we have to have good metadata on our content in order to improve search. But in search, we also have to work with those metadata that we get from the content in order to use them in the best way. So how to do that? We have two different types of properties, two different metadata in search. The first one is the crawled properties. Crawled properties are the properties that can be extracted from the content source, from your content, during the crawl process. So when the crawler goes to the content source and collects the content processor will extract the metadata, and this metadata is going to be the crawled property of your content. You will have a lot of crawled property, hundreds, maybe thousands of properties, if you have a big environment. But we don't use them immediately. We don't use crawled properties as is. We have to define managed properties in order to make them available on the search UI. Those managed properties are controlled by the search administrators, and those are the ones that we can use in our search. Why this is important? It is very important to talk about because you might have some challenges with your properties. Let's say you have different libraries in your SharePoint form. You have a file share, and you might have some other content source as well. In your SharePoint libraries, if you have a good information architecture, you call the property project ID with the same name. You have project ID on each document library, right? But you might have some different name for the same property in a different document library or in a different system. So you might have some content source where you do not have project ID, but you have project MBR, or you have project number. In those cases, those different properties have the same meaning. Your end users don't care what the system name of the property is. They don't care if it's called project ID or project number. They want to find the information by the ID, by the identifier of your project, right? It doesn't make sense to create separate refiners for project number and project ID. Instead of that, you just create one managed property called project number, and you map this to project ID, project MBR, and project number, and whatever you want to map. With this, your users will get only one property on search called project number, but behind the scenes, this property gets the value from a lot of crawled properties, right? And this one is a very simple example. But as I said, if you crawl a big content source, you might end up having hundreds or maybe thousands of properties. Planning all those mappings and the managed properties is not easy. It's a challenging task. You can imagine if you have separate content sources, if you have hundreds or thousands of properties, you have to figure out which one to map where. But don't worry, you don't have to do this for each crawled properties, because you have to do this for the managed properties only that you really need. So don't create managed property for everything, because you don't really need that. It's a very important point. All right, what kind of metadata we have and how we can measure the quality of metadata? As I said, we have to have good metadata, and we have to have consistent metadata. For example, if you have a field for partners, and some users put Microsoft into this field, some others put Microsoft USA, some others put only MSFT, the abbreviation of Microsoft, it's not consistent. You have to find out how to make your metadata to be consistent. For this, you should consider auto-tagging. Auto-tagging is the process where you do not tag the content by your users, but you tag the content automatically using some custom-developed component or some third-party tool or entity extraction out of the box in SharePoint. What does it mean? Auto-tagging can be dictionary-based. This means you define your dictionary. For example, you define the dictionary of your products that contains the product names, the abbreviations, the synonyms for your products. And during the crawl in search, the crawler will extract the information, will find matchings with that dictionary, and if any matching will be found, it puts that value into the index, right? So this is the dictionary-based auto-tagging. Of course, this dictionary can be advanced with third-party tools, but basically this is how it will work. You might have some statistical auto-tagging. For example, let's say you have millions of documents in a file share, and you want to tag them, but you don't know what kind of tags, what kind of content you have. You can sit down and you can try to figure it out, or you can use some statistical methods, some statistical tools for this that crawls all your content, extracts some suggestions for your tagging, and of course you can do some massage on them, but at the end you will get something that you can start with, right? So human workload is always required for this, because there is no perfect way to get the top perfect dictionary for auto-tagging or taxonomy for auto-tagging, but you can have a lot of help for this. And also you can use some hybrid solution for this. When you build up some of your dictionary, but you get some other parts of your taxonomy in a statistical way, evaluating your content. And don't forget about big data, because we have more and more big data challenges nowadays, the big sources of content. It's very important that search might be not the best tool to work with big data, but you can consider it. So search can surface a lot of different things by metadata and by all those kind of things. And as I have mentioned, don't forget about search analytics, because it can help a lot for you. All right, let me show you one more demonstration for metadata. I am back to my O365 environment, searching for marketing. We have already seen this. And you can see on the left side that we have different kinds of refiners. You know how they work. If I selecting someone who I know created the content I am interested in, and I am selecting the type of the content, I get the PDF files that have been authored by Alex, one of my colleagues, right? But maybe those out-of-the-box refiners are not the best for you. Maybe you need something like this, something different, and let's just play with this a bit. I'm going to edit this page, edit this web part, because this is implemented as a web part as well. I'm going to choose the refiners. And here you go, you can see that we do have the refiners. Those are the managed properties that are set to be refiners, and those are the ones that I have chosen to be my refiners on this page. So let's say I am not really interested in the last modified time. Instead, I am going to add the created date, because it makes much more sense for me. And it is very important, so let me move up this refiner to the top of my refinement panel. And I can see some sample values here. It's a date and type refiner. And I can change the display template refiner item. I don't really like this way of showing the refiners, the default refinement item. I would like to get something nicer, like slider with graph. OK? Here you go. Oops. I have to change this one. Here you go. So remember, I removed last modified date, added created date, and moved it up to the top. I'm clicking OK, and saving my page. And here you go. I do have created date on the top of my refiners to be this nice slider, right? So this is how to work with the refiners. This is very easy to add them to your search pages. One thing to consider here, if you know that you have some properties, some metadata that you want to use as refiners, you have to create the managed property for them in search. The challenge with managed properties is that you have to do a full crawl to fill in with data, to fill in the values. So you define the managed properties in search. And if you want to get them filled with properties, filled with values, you have to do a full crawl. What's wrong? What's the challenge with this? The challenge is if your users say, hey, we want to get a new refiner, creating the managed property is easy. Adding that managed property to the refinement panel is easy. You could see that. The challenge is to run a full crawl. Because if you have a huge content source, a full crawl might take weeks, right? So don't forget to plan for it. Because if you collect some properties, some managed properties that you have to create, and you say, all right, I'm going to do a full crawl twice a year, and I'm going to add those managed properties, I'm going to change those managed properties before that advanced planned full crawl, that's a good way. But it's not the way, like I'm adding one managed property, doing a full crawl, adding one more, doing one more full crawl, right? Full crawl might cost a lot of time, a lot of resources, right? So please, it seems to be very easy. Technically, it is. But in big environment, it takes time and resources. All right, so let me summarize what I wanted to tell you, what message I wanted to give you today. We do have information overload, everyone, each of you. If you don't, let me know. Information architecture is very important. Search is also very important. Findability is very important. This is a real challenge, how to find the information. But what you really have to do is to plan them together. Your information architecture and your search belong together. If you do have a good IA, you get a good search. And that's it. If your search doesn't work, most likely that means your IA is not good enough, right? So it's not the fault, it's not the fault of SharePoint. Don't blame the technology. Consider to improve your content if you want to improve your search. Take an eye on Oslo. It's coming. It's cool. It's really great. For IA planning, you have to consider focusing on your users, focusing on your content. Don't forget the golden set of content, the small set to start with. You will be the hero if you can present that golden set to your users. And don't forget the importance and the power of search analytics. Search is complex, but it's not impossible. You have to plan it in advance. And don't forget about the context and the user besides of content in search. Those are the main points. Those are the main basic points for a good IA and a good search experience. So now I would like to say thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. Thank you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know now. We are having an executive roundtable right after this session, so we can discuss your search challenges there. We have the expert panel, Ask the Experts, this evening from 6:15, I think. And I'm around during the whole conference, and I'm happy to help with your questions. Thank you. Yeah, the slides are already on Yammer. So you can find them there. They are already uploaded.